Hi everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today I'm joined by my guest Matthew Belair, a life coach, author of the book Zen Athlete, a guide to self-mastery, and host of top-rated podcast Mastermind, Body and Spirit podcast. Matthew has led an extraordinary life where he has traveled the world in search of secrets to unlock our superhuman potential. In today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive into Matt's most amazing mystical experiences and lessons of self-mastery that he learned during his time spent studying with the 34th generation Shaolin monks in China, studying with Buddhist monks in Nepal, and how he survived a near-death experience while trekking Mount Everest. We are also going to talk about his expedition to Pyramid of Giza in Egypt with a group of scientists and physicists, including Nassim Haramein, to experience the chambers of the Giza pyramid as an activation device. And we are also going to talk about his amazing life-changing enlightenment experience that he had with Thoth, an Egyptian deity with a human body and an ibis head. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, sit back and relax as we share in this amazingly enlightening and magical journey that Matthew has been on and the secrets that he has mastered along the way. Welcome to the podcast, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm a big fan, so this is such a privilege for me. And when I think of you, I think of that book, Life and Teachings of Masters of the Far East.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I've never heard anyone mention that book anywhere. Apart from once I was listening to you and you mentioned it. It's such a great book because for those who don't know, it's a book that was published in 1924 by somebody called Beard Spalding, and it's about a group of scientists and researchers who take a journey into the mountains of India, and they study and learn with the masters of the Far East who are able to perform these superhuman feats. And it's really interesting because one of the masters takes the group into hike up the mountains, and they come across these small population of villages where people live over 500 years. They look 21 and they're glowing with radiant health. They can bilocate, and there's a lot of scenes in the book about how masters, including Jesus, appear to these people, these scientists and researchers, and they appear and disappear. And when they appear in this room, the room just lights up without electricity, and they basically talk to them about how they do these things and the wisdom and the knowledge that underpins all these things that come to them quite naturally as a byproduct of them having, living in an elevated state. So your life, I feel, that you've led comes as close to mirroring that book and the story of those group of researchers and scientists as I've ever come across. So with that said, I thought a good place to begin would be that you've spent time studying with the Shaolin monks of China, or in China, and I would love to know more about that experience that you had. And I was hoping you can build the narrative in a way that where you how did you come across this group anyway? Like, how does one arrange to go and study with these monks? And also what was it like there? Like a bit of background as to, was it a monastery? And I love knowing the little details, like seemingly mundane, but I think they're really interesting. Like, what was a day like in the life of a monk over there, and a day in the life of you over there when you were with them? So yeah, can you please start us with that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the very kind intro. I've always just been very fascinated with, enlightenment and seeking out the masters on the planet. So I thought, if Jesus existed, I'd just go hunt him down. Or if there's some sort of, enlightened person, I wanted to go study with them and learn from them and be around them so that I could, learn from their wisdom firsthand. And so that's why I wanted to train with the Shaolin monks, because I grew up a martial artist. I always enjoyed martial arts, and they were the ones that could actually do things that were superhuman, breaking stone and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't really know what was real or fake. And as I got older, I discovered there was a lot of fake stuff like black magic, where they'll say they can break the brick or whatever, and then it's just a magic trick, which is kind of disappointing. But these Shaolin monks could actually do these things. They could break stone with two fingers, break bigger pieces over their head. It was just incredibly amazing. So as long as I could remember, I wanted to train with the Shaolin monks. And the school that I went to, they only opened up to Westerners for the last 10 years. So all their training and all their practices were hidden. It's, it's a bit of like a sacred thing. So only some schools opened up. And the school that I went to, you have to go there for years. They have a second academy that's kind of secret, and you need a special invitation to go there, and you need to train at this academy for something like 3 or 5 years and earn it. Then you can go to this like super special one that was even higher up in the mountains. So there are some schools in China that are now open to training Westerners. Some are they differ in varying degrees, but this one will train you how they traditionally train. So some of it doesn't make any sense, like power stretching, for example. That's where you would get into the splits or you would do a stretch, and one of the masters, which they call Sifu, would come over and just start reefing on you, jamming your, putting all the pressure down, and like you'd be in this, in the splits, and they'd be putting their weight on your shoulders and basically just torturing you. Everybody be screaming. And a lot of people got injured, because they're not used to the training. So I was like there, and I was like, you can't do that to me. I was like, you gotta push that. And they just do it how they've been trained, how they've been taught. So it was really, really a very fascinating experience. One of the interesting things is you would do hard qigong, which is basically conditioning the body. And so my first day there, I'm getting kicked in the back by one of the Western students, and the Sifu isn't happy enough with how hard he's kicking me, so he comes over and starts kicking me in the back. You have to stand there and kind of like a front lunge squat, and your back is straight, and he starts kicking me in the back, and it feels like I don't know, Jose Canseco has hit me with a baseball bat across my back. And I'm like, holy crap, what did I get myself into? And they also did training like, conditioning the body as well. So part of that training was going over to trees and poking the trees. And these trees had dent holes from years of them training there and slamming their index finger and their middle finger into the tree to condition them so that they could break stone or brick or whatever kind of crazy thing that they'd be doing. So
Wow.
the training was truly extraordinary. And yeah, so I could go on if you want, or if I can direct it in somewhere specific.
Yeah, no, so when you say that they were poking the tree, so is the idea that they're trying to, how in Masters of the Far East, they talk about like having, it's like mind over matter, like they change the energy to then influence the physicality of something. So is that what they were trying to do? Like, what was the principles underlying behind what they were trying to do when they're trying, sort of poke the tree? Like, what's the intention?
Yeah, so for there, when you do, so it's just qigong. So the qigong would be soft qigong would be meditation, also understanding the body's energy field, and so that's what would be tuning in. People would see it as meditation or standing meditation, but they see it as like an energy force, right? How do you cultivate this energy and then direct it? And then the hard qigong is literally where you take your body and punish it. So that the point of it was to condition your body to make it stronger, to take an impact where you could break stone or things like that with your fingers, because over time those limbs are going to be hardened. And so even when I interviewed Master Go, I was lucky to do that. I didn't think he did a lot of interviews, and so I guess they made some sort of special thing where I could talk to him and interview him. And he said, I asked him, these things are pretty impossible. Most people are going to think that you're doing a trick. And I said, so what's the trick, right? And I've been tricked before, and I've seen people do that. And there's a translator, so she says no trick, or he says no trick. And so I said, come on, like what's the trick? You must be doing something. And he's like, no trick, because he could break it with 2 fingers, elbows, knees, over his head. It's just ridiculous what's going on. And so I ask a third time, and he knows what I'm saying, and he starts slamming his fingers down on the desk. And he says, years of conditioning his fingers and years of qigong. That's how he was able to do it. And so I asked him, well, why don't you do this all the time? Because they only do these feats for demonstrations and things like that to promote the academy or the teachings and something like that. And so he basically said I could hurt myself. So I was very curious, thought that answer was interesting. So it was a very human element to it. Understood that when he did these feats that there was a risk of danger, but the preparation was so intense through years of training that they're able to do these things, and they can break steel over their arms and things like that. And it's real. It's 100% real, but they build it up over time. Some other schools will use sand first. They punch the sand, then they have it to gravel, and then they get eventually to punching, stones and brick walls and things like that. And one of the masters, I watched him basically do a palm strike to brick and just make it into mush. It was like 3 or 4 strikes. I imagined it as he would just hit it and it would go into this puff, but it took 4 strikes and he was able to basically just, I don't know the word for it, eviscerate, disintegrate this brick. And I was like, holy smokes. And they don't do demonstrations for us. They're kind of in their own world and they would train at night and we would train during the day. And when I went, I was like, holy, that is unbelievable. So I went over and tried, and I was like, okay, I'd been training mixed martial arts in Thailand. That's pretty strong. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try, and I just try as hard as I can, hit it as hard as I can. It does nothing, and see this master's hands after, and they're these like just funny meat hands. They were so meaty and strong and calloused and wild. And so, yeah, it was just their training and dedication for years and years and years. That's all they do. They eat, sleep, and breathe martial arts and training, and they become essentially superhumans that can do extraordinary things.
So was it principle based on physical conditioning rather than manipulating energy to then influence matter, would you say?
It's both. So they do equal amounts of training for both. So that's why they condition the body, and then the soft qigong is in the morning. So when they go to do those feats, they're directing the energy into the fingertips, into the elbow, into the top of the head. That's why they'll do a certain, gesture with the hands where they're, moving their chi and energy to the top of their head and directing all of their focus there. But they
Mm.
will do training to basically harden up those elements as well. So they have equal parts the mental, spiritual side and the focus side, and then the actual practical conditioning and the body side of things. And what they did, as far as their conditioning and training, was also pretty extraordinary. We would go through these trainings from 6 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon every day, no breaks. Your body would be totally toast, and you'd think once you're on day 2 or 3 of the training they get you to do, your body is just done, and you think you can maybe do 10 push-ups, and 4 hours later you've done 500, and your body is just crushing you. So they push you so much further than you think you can, and that's an element to martial arts, to gaining that spiritual wisdom. So few people really push their bodies to let them know what they're capable of, and that grows you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well.
So they were training with you during the day, or training you, your group, but in the nighttime they were doing their own practices. Is that right? Yeah. So when did
Yeah,
they
yeah.
sleep? When did they sleep, or was it just part of the evening was also spent doing all of this?
Yeah, so they would have different trainers for different groups that would be put out into different pods, and we would have the place where we would sleep, and then they had their own quarters. Some people slept outside the academy because they lived close by, but they would just have separate quarters. Some of them lived at the academy as well, so it was kind of like a mini apartment building, with 4 levels, and they occupied one of them, and all the students were on the rest. And so we were kind of on a bit of like house arrest. I never felt like a kid, as an adult, because if you snuck out or you got drunk or did
Mm.
anything like that, you would get punished, and they would hit you with a staff really hard.
Mm.
And my first day there, I'm just watching them beat the crap out of this guy, and I just asked someone like, "What is going on?" And they said one of the Sifus caught him drunk for his birthday. So he had been there for about a year, and they just beat the crap out of him, and his back and legs and everything was just red. And that's how they did things. If they caught you, you were punished.
So it's all about discipline, obviously.
Yeah, it's all discipline, and
Mm.
they didn't sugarcoat it for the Westerners. So again, it was only open to Westerners, I think, for about 10 years when I got there. Other than that, it was a
Mm.
traditional teaching that was never open to the outside world.
And was this group made up of mostly like outsiders coming into China, or was it a lot of locals as well in this group?
All the group that I attended was all international students. So they
Mm.
do have their own training for people from China, which is really different in different schools. So they separate them from the academy that I was in. They would have their teachings where they have certain schools that will teach only in China, and then their international schools.
Interesting. And so the master is called Sifu, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was was he the most highly skilled out of all of them? Like, could he do more amazing things than the rest of the group that was, under him, so to speak?
Well, any teacher is called Sifu, so that would be trainer, instructor. So they're all Sifus. But there was one that his name was Master Go, that could do most of those incredible feats. And then the other one was like a Tai Chi world champion, where he'd go through the form and he just had this level of mastery through, I don't know how many moves it was, but I got to watch him do it once, and it was just unbelievable the way the body's able to move. So you had different kind of disciplines, but Master Go was the one that was most superhuman to me, because he was the one that was, able to, break stone with two fingers, which makes no sense, even like on a cup. So you'd think it would flip up, but he was able to go fast enough, and bigger ones over his head and knees, and every element of his body that he wished. And so, he was kind of like the headmaster, and he'd walk around, and, he looked extra special too, and super tiny, maybe like
Mm,
5'4",
mm,
120 pounds soaking wet, and, was able to do these amazing things. But they also had this incredible level of peace and movement and mastery, and a different way
mm.
of being that is interesting to witness.
So how long were you there for?
So I only got a month. A lot of people stayed a lot more than that.
Mm,
So I just did, basically 5 weeks in total. I had to get back to Canada because something came up. I wanted to stay a little bit longer, but I
mm,
basically got 5 weeks of intense training and to observe and experience it. But a lot of the students would actually stay 3 months, 6 months, year, and 2 years, and really dedicate. Unfortunately, I didn't have that kind of time to give there, but it would have been really interesting to see what would have happened over 3, 4, 5 months. And that's how they develop these skills, right? All day, every day for years. And,
mm.
5, 10 years later, they're doing things that basically look impossible.
And what was their like everyday life in terms of, did they have a special diet that they, also prescribed for the group, and, in terms of, just other practices like meditation and, nature walks? I don't know.
Yeah. So, for us, what we would do is it would start, optional in the morning. You could do Qigong, which is basically meditation, be standing. And a lot of the monks would be doing that. And then we would rotate through power training forms. And so you'd pick a discipline. There
Mm,
was Shaolin, there was Mantis, there was Wing Chun. And you'd pick one of those disciplines as a student. But the masters, how they would do it, they would already train. They'd have their separate thing at night where they'd be actually going into weapons and to other levels where we're just newbies, right? So they would be
mm,
taking us through basic forms. And so, as far as the food goes, it was just a traditional diet, a lot of eggs, a lot of noodles and things like that, and chicken. And so there was nothing really special or extraordinary about that. They just had their traditional meal, and we would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was it. And and yeah, but for their training, they did it all at night. So they train us during the day till about 4, and
mm.
then they would be training from 6 to 9 usually every day.
So, when we think of places like that, we always come with like a preconceived idea that, it will be some sort of a monastery nestled in a remote location, and there'd be like, singing Tibetan singing bowls playing in the background. So, when you went to this place, did you have like these, some sort of preconceived idea? And when you got there, was it quite different to what you expected?
Yeah, it was a gated place, right? So it'd been, I don't know how old it was. It looked very, very old, and it was high up in the mountains. So it was about 2 hours from the airport, really high up. And it was a very, very small town. So it did have this mystical appeal to it. And at the building, whatever the stone was very, very old as well. And it was really gated. So it did feel like this special group. And at night we would do these basically katas where, you're screaming out and you're doing the katas, and have some film of it with, maybe 100 people or 200 students or whatever it was, and it looked like something out of a karate movie, and it was always super
Mm,
interesting to watch and be a part of. And so that was really wonderful. And like I said, there, I guess, had the second academy where you had to be invited to it, and only one of the students that was even there had the ability to go. And he shared the story about Master Go being there in the winter, and that's when he got to go. And he said one night I saw him outside, and he was doing standing qigong, where you basically stand and you have your hands, kind of together like that, like you're holding a ball, but there's no ball there, and they're
mm.
slightly out in front of you and relaxed. And he said it was snowing, but all around where he was, it was perfectly dry. So there's a circle of snow was falling around where he's doing the standing meditation. He
Wow.
thought that was really fascinating. So you had kind of these mystical stories that would come back, but only a few students got to go there. And I imagine that one was even more mystical. But for this one, just being in the mountains and the beautiful views, when you would run, you'd be in these beautiful Chinese mountains. And every Friday they would do something called a hill run, where you go, there's this big statue and this trail, and you have to basically run up and down this hill as many times as you can until they tell you to stop, and do other things. And so it was pretty magical. The stairs even going up were, it's a grand scale. It's very beautiful architecture
Mm.
and statues and things like that.
Oh, that sounds amazing, honestly. And so, with the secret school, so it sounds like the kind of things that they showed you guys in terms of what they can do. With the secret school, they probably have a lot more that they can perform in terms of what we would consider superhuman. But I guess they don't share that until you're in a place where you're studying with them, and like they have the a person that they chose out of the group to study in the secret school. So they probably have a lot more up their sleeve in terms of what they can do. Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say, because they do their demonstrations every now and then. And when I was there, you had the option of doing some additional courses, and one of them was acupuncture. And they had these charts of the human body that were so incredibly detailed. It was extraordinary. And all these different points on the body, and it was mapped out in like 20 different layers. And I was like, holy smokes. And one of the masters actually got flown around and would go and get called by high level prominent politicians and business people and things of that nature, to have him heal them, because he was a master at acupuncture and different modalities. And so I said, well, what if you have a cold? He goes, oh, you put one here. And I said, well, what about this? And they would know,
Mm.
for every kind of ailment you'd have, they would have a point where they'd be freeing up the energy of the body. And that's really what this was about. It's the exploration of the energetics of the body. And so that's where it comes into the physical form. So they train the physical form to be as strong and as
Mm.
resilient as possible, but understanding the inner energetics of how that works, and how to direct that energy, how to pay attention to that flow, how to cultivate that energy, and then focus it on a single point. And yeah, and then just do extraordinary things with it.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I totally believe in all of that. My personal, belief is that the future for us as humanity is a spiritual technology. That energy medicine is how we're going to heal ourselves. From all these things that ail us at the moment. But it's already there. It's just that it's not mainstream. It's not been given the opportunity. But it reminds me of that. The hospital that was it's called the Medicine Less Hospital in China, that was closed in early 2000s. It was featured in one of Greg Braden's earlier presentations, where there's a clip of a lady in the hospital. It's called a Medicine Less Hospital, and she's hooked up with a monitor with the ultrasound, and she's terminally ill with a tumor. And there is a group of qigong practitioners who are standing around her bed, and they're chanting something, and as they're chanting, the tumor disappears within minutes. And if you haven't seen that, it's on YouTube. I think a lot of Greg Braden's presentations used to be on YouTube, and you can just see this. And it's amazing that, I remember, so from memory, hopefully I'm remembering this correctly, but I think Greg was explaining that he asked those Qigong practitioners how were they doing this, and or what were they chanting? And I think the answer was that they were basically chanting the feeling of that this woman is already healed. And then it's like matter. So whether that clip is real or not, or true, whether you believe it in that particular clip being the authentic one, who knows? But I think that kind of thing exists. Like, there are people in the world who can do that kind of thing. It's just that we don't know where to find them most of the time.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. The work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and the placebo effect, I did his intermediate and advanced workshop and met a lot of people that actually cured terminal illnesses through meditation. So they did it themselves. And when I trained with the Native American elder, he used to say this. He used to say, one person can't heal you, but a few people can. And it kind of goes into that biblical idea that um, when two or more are gathered in my name, I am there. So you bring the Great Spirit. And he would have these traditional Native American chants or breaths. One of them was called the bee's breath. And one of the people in the group had Lyme disease that she was recovering from and had no energy for years. She'd been recovering for quite some time. And the group gathered around her and did what's called the bee's breath, where you basically make a buzzing sound like a bee. And there's a big group. And she said that for the first time in years, she got this energy, that this crazy energy. Everybody's focusing on her. And then she didn't know what to do with it. She just kept getting wired. And for the first time in, I think it was like 3 or 5 years, she was out with this, and she went for a run. And then that was the starting of her healing process. She was able to run each and every day and basically recover from Lyme from that experience. So it's possible for sure. I think that one person could do something like that, but
Mm.
I've been noticing in these things when I hear of these stories, it seems like there's two or more, and whether it's a chant or whether it's a prayer, this is in Christianity as well. I have some friends that are really deep in that, the Christian Science, and they talk about that, the healing power of prayer. And, I've heard of a couple of real life stories of people doing that. And it seems to me that they're accessing the spiritual world. They're requesting the creator God, and however you view that energy source, to command it for that person, to access the source in the similar manner to what Master Go is doing when he's breaking the stone. He says, I'm moving all of my energy to my fingertips or to the top of my head or to the elbow, and I'm directing all of my will, my spiritual force, my essence to that point. And so if we're able to do that, kind of like the mandala behind me, it's this vibrational pattern. And that's where cymatics, and I can't remember what it was, but they talked about matching the frequency of the disease and blasting it through some sort of vibrational technology or sound technology. So I absolutely agree that it's probable that these people are doing it, and maybe it will become much more mainstream. But it does seem like a mastery skill, just like Master Go breaking the stones. He can do it, but 99.9% of the planet cannot do that. So what did
Mm.
he do to achieve this? He trained all day, every day, smashing his fingers into trees and meditating for 10, 12 years. And I had asked him that question too. I said, do you think this is possible for anybody? And he said, yes, if they had the will to even want to try something like this, but most people would give up just before they get there.
Mm.
That it's a long, really challenging process. And then all of a sudden there's a breakthrough. So you'd need a lot of will and perseverance to even accomplish something like that. And just like anything you see, whether it's extreme sports athletes or somebody doing, or a master painter or a musician, it takes them years to master that craft. It doesn't come overnight.
Yeah, and I truly believe that sometimes, well, I believe that the belief sometimes must come first in order for you to persevere. Because if, let's say, if you're trying to achieve something that seems unattainable, like just spontaneously healing yourself or somebody else, you need to believe first that it is possible, so that when things get hard and you feel like giving up, you still have that belief that grounds you, because you're not doubting the fact that it's possible. It's just that it's not possible for you right now. So sometimes I feel like having the belief first helps that process. And also about the power of prayer and the group energy. I mean, I've always found that if I spend a lot of time with like-minded spiritual people, my energy goes up and I'm able to do things like that more easily. Whereas if I'm not having that, then my own abilities kind of become a little bit, they dwindle. So there's definitely that thing about, creating that group energy to harness and manifest these things a little bit more easily. And I'm a big fan of Dr. Joe Dispenza as well. I feel like he's one of those people who's done all this research, but he's now trying to, well, he is doing it, practically applying it, and giving people tools to practically apply it in a really real way. And he's actually got a YouTube channel where people put their testimonials about how they've healed and what their healing process was like as part of doing his workshop. And doing his workshop is actually one of my dreams. Hopefully he will come to Australia one day again, so I'll be able to do that. So maybe this is a good segue into so you spent time studying with Tibetan monks in Nepal as well. So was that after your trip to China? And yeah, please tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, the time that I spent with the Tibetan monks was, well, So I wanted to originally go to Tibet, and the reason why was because, like I said at the beginning, I wanted to find these masters. And so
Mm,
if I wanted to be enlightened, I figure a Tibetan monk was the closest thing that I could find, if these teachers exist. And so I didn't realize at the time that Tibet is still occupied by China. So I ended
mm,
up having to go to Nepal, where they had a monastery there where I taught English to kids in the morning, and then I would have conversations with older monks in the afternoon to help them with their English. And then I was also learning about Buddhism and their practices and things like anything regarding Buddhism, nature, life, and the universe. And so I did that as my first stop. So I went to Nepal, and then I went to Thailand to train MMA, and then I went over to China after that. And and yeah, that was another really beautiful experience because when I taught English in the morning, I thought because they were monks, they were going to be well behaved, and they were just still children. They were it's really hard to teach them, so it was a lot of fun, and I was definitely in over my head. And then in the afternoon when I'd have these discussions with these Tibetan monks, it was just so beautiful and enlightening because they're main teaching is kindness and compassion, right? Love and compassion. And so when I'd ask them these different questions, you could see them all contemplate. They wouldn't give a rehearsed answer, wherever it was. They would all just really think and contemplate and then speak. And so I learned a lot from them. And one of the interesting experiences I had, again, to reference this mandala, they had something similar like that. And they had the one day they were all doing these group ohms. So everybody was doing a long ohm and a meditation in this big hall, and I could hear it. Then I was with one of the teachers and guides, and I said, "Can I go in there? That sounds amazing." He said, "Sure." So he walked me over there. There was maybe 50 or 100 of them, something like that, and they were all doing this. And I sat down and started doing it. And as I did, it felt like my body was going into particles and then back
wow.
into solid matter, going into particles, back into solid matter. And it was so fascinating to do that with that many people, with the resonance they had, and they had the bowls and the things, of that nature going on as well. So that was a really fascinating real world experience because I hadn't had it like that, where I could get with the group and feel my body basically becoming the particle in the ether and then come back to solid matter. So that was pretty special.
Wow, that is very special. And have you had that experience quite often since then, or was that once in a, blue moon type of thing? Because that
Yeah,
sounds amazing.
Yeah, for that experience, it was just there. I've had other kind of mystical experiences through meditation, but they're spread out. It's unfortunately not every time, and I find they're kind of like little winks in the practice, because it's not you. They say you don't meditate to get something. It's a practice of quieting the mind so you can use that energy. But holy smokes, it is fun to have those experiences because it's like a direct connection with God or your spiritual self in a way that's visceral and unexplainable. And so I was really grateful for that. And I feel like to get it, I don't know if it's because they're able to resonate the Om in a different way than Westerners can, because I have done group Oms at festivals and in other places, and I didn't. It was a great experience, and it felt nice, but it wasn't to the same resonance or harmony or power that it was when I was in Nepal.
It could be a combination of perhaps the group energy, being anchored there. And also, like you said, they were, oming it with a particular frequency that we're not always able to replicate. That is so interesting. And I suppose that's how bilocation happens, where you can consciously, departicleize and reparticleize somewhere else through intention or something like that. But yeah, that does sound like such an amazing thing. And I agree. I always, when I have my spiritual, mystical experiences, they give me a spiritual high for a while because and I can't get enough of them. And I am just like you, they happen spontaneously. You cannot predict them. They'll happen when they'll happen. But when they do, I feel like how it helps me is that it reminds me that, we do live in a magical world, that there is something beyond the 3D. And the more I have that, the more it keeps me going. And, and it's fun. It's fun. So with these Nepali, the Tibetan monks, how long were you there for? And was it again, the quintessential idea of what a monastery looks like and spending time there?
Yeah, with the monks, I was able to do 6 weeks, and I got to travel around, and they had a variety of monasteries. So some of them were more traditional than others, and some of them are very vast in size. They're very beautiful buildings, and so there it's kind of common where you have that path. If you'd like to go the path of the monastic monk, then you can. And what the work they said they were doing is they're translating these ancient Buddhist texts into English to now give to the world, and that's what their mission was. That's what they're doing there. So
Mm.
they're studying these texts, they're translating them into English, and they're trying to get them out to the world. So when they say, you don't need to go to a monastery to meditate to get the benefit, and I felt that too, but I really wanted to be there just to know it. It's the same. It is the same. It's very special, and it's very beautiful, and marvelous to be in that environment, and you can get it at home because it at the same time was anticlimactic. Meditation can be very anticlimactic, and
Mhm.
they would have a lot of times these meditation rooms
Mm.
and and places where you could go do that that had a special sanctuary feel to it, and I would get to do that, but it was the same idea. It was still me when I was meditating, it was still my problems, still all the things that go in my mind. Unfortunately, it wasn't, go there and then have this experience and change myself completely. Although it was a part of the journey to make me who I am. And I went there, and I'm grateful for the experience because it was necessary for my growth. And I always like to immerse myself in the training or in the teaching. And so I still try to do that as much as I can. When I wanted to snowboard, I tried to get to the best place in the world around the best snowboarders so I could be the best I can, because you surround yourself with the best environment possible, with the best athletes or teachers possible, and do it all day every day and see how good you can get. And I feel like that's one of the smartest and best ways that you can learn anything.
Mm. So, is that where you had your near death experience while you were trekking at Mount Everest?
One of them, yeah.
Yeah. I realize you've actually had a few. So, yeah, please tell us if you feel comfortable sharing it, because I remember I can imagine it's quite a personal experience.
Yeah, some of them were not as, great. One of them almost fell off a cliff, and my life flashed before my eyes and had to make a leap of faith, and so that was okay, and just had a life review in that moment, which was very
Oh.
fascinating. So other people's experiences where they're, kind of going to this other realm, where they're actually dead and they come back. Mine
Mm.
was a little bit different. So I was trekking Mount Everest, and I did two peaks. I was there when I went to Nepal. I didn't even realize Mount Everest was there. And so the first day that someone said, "Hey, are you going trekking?" And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "Mount Everest." And I was like, "Oh shoot." I was like, "I guess I have to go because I just traveled all this way. I may as well trek that thing because I'm right here. When am I ever going to get that opportunity again? I
Mm.
guess I have to walk up this huge mountain. Oh my goodness." So I was taking a lot of photos at the time, and apparently this other walk is a little bit more beautiful. I forget what it's called right now, but there's also peaks that are apparently a little bit more picturesque than Everest. It's called Gokuri. They have these lakes up there. And so I was like, I found out I can do Gokuri, and then I can go down, and then I can do Everest. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do a trek where I do both. So I'm going up, and it's unbelievably magical up there. It truly is wild. And speaking of life and teachings of the masters of the Far East, when I was about 3 or 4 days up, I saw a monastery etched into the mountains, very, very far away, just tucked into the side, because there's no monasteries. There's kind of, buildings and other structures, but nothing wild on the way up to Everest. And I asked my guides, "Do you know who's there? Do you know how to get there?" And they didn't know how. They didn't know who was there
Wow.
or how to get there. And so that was incredibly fascinating. And right on the cliff face. So it was exactly how they describe in Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, kind of being right on the cliff face of the Himalayas and in complete solitude. And so anyway, I get up to Gokuri, and I say, "Hey, do you want to take pictures tonight? Because we just got there. We walked all day, and it's been sunny every single day." So we said no. I ended up making a friend, and we did a few day hike together. So we said no. Let's just do it in the morning. I get up in the morning, and it's you can't see anything. It's all fogged in. We didn't even clue in that the morning might not have a good view. So all that hiking up to get the most beautiful, spectacular view of Everest, we just need to do another 40 minutes. But we were tired, and couldn't see my hand in front of my face. So I was so angry, and I had to just walk down one day to go back up to Everest, and was just trying to get myself out of this anger for missing this opportunity. When am I ever going to come back and be able to get that photo? So when we walked up, when we went down one day, it snowed a little bit, and then we walked up, started to get going back up to Everest. That night it snowed what I found out later to be a record-breaking snowfall, it might have been 60 or 80 centimeters, something massive. It was knee and waist deep everywhere, and we had to get through this valley, and no one was leaving this hut. And so I had a flight out to China, and they said, well, if you want to see Everest, you have to go today. You have to get to the next part, or we won't be able to get to Everest, and you won't make your flight. So in my mind, I was like, I just missed this shot. There's no way I am missing this opportunity. So I'm gonna start walking. So we start walking, and it's kind of funny at first. It's knee and waist deep snow. And if you've ever gone through really heavy snow, you realize how challenging that is. We're trying to get through this valley, and we can't do it. So we have to kind of retreat down to this cabin. And we've been out there for about 2 hours, and I was sweating because it was so deep to trek this through. All of my stuff is soaked. They have this path that's all set, so they don't really give you gear that's to keep you dry, because you don't really need it. It should just be a little bit of snow. So all my stuff is soaked to the bone. I sweated profusely, and they said, we got to get to that next part. So we start going through the valley, and that's where my body starts to kind of shut down, where then I start to use sports psychology, where like I'm starting to feel really drained. And now the sun has gone down and the temperature is dropping. And so I'm full of energy. I kept doing all this stuff. We get to this one part where there's another cabin before we have to do this really steep incline, and we see one person going down, and they said, don't go any further. We're the only people that have left. It's super deep. You're going to want to stay here. I look at them, and they say, if you want to make it, we have to get to that next spot. So I said, okay. So I start walking up this now next steep incline with my body really losing energy.
Mhm.
And I start to take these little micro naps on the stones, and just taking little breaks where I can, and going up the steep incline. And there's this point where I started to fall asleep, and I woke myself up, and then I heard myself say, it's okay, Matt, go to sleep. But it wasn't my inner dialogue. It was me outside of myself
Mm.
telling me that, from some sort of other perspective that wasn't an inner dialogue. And at that point, I realized, oh, like I'm in trouble. This is not good.
Mm.
What is this? So I kind of then went into robot mode, where I said, guys, I got to get to this next spot. I went in robot mode. I got to the top of the hill, and that ends up being where the Everest graveyard is, where everybody has died. So I'm kind of clued in enough, but I'm like, I got to get out of here. We trek
Mm.
through another about an hour and a half, and then we see the hut, and I can't feel my body. I don't, I'm kind of out of it, and they're trying to figure out a path through the water because it's gone slushy and there's a big water. I just walked through the water, got to about, almost like knee and ankle deep. I don't even care. And I could see the hut, but at any point, the scary thing is how comfortable it was. I wasn't uncomfortable. I could have just gone to sleep, and it would have been the most restful, peaceful, easy experience. It wasn't uncomfortable.
Mm.
That's why it was scary, right? It wasn't like I was in pain. It was this comfort bringing me in. And so I just walked through the icy water, didn't care. I get inside, and they make me a fire. I put on a jacket. I get all my warm clothes. I can't eat. And the next day I think I'd kind of recovered, and I started to walk, and body had no energy whatsoever. I was
Mm.
completely drained, and I ended up having to get helicoptered out. And I still was like, I'm gonna make it to this thing whether it kills me. I don't care. There's no way I'm coming this close and not seeing this bugger. It's gonna kill me.
Mm.
I don't care. And so I get helicoptered out. I find out it's a record-breaking snowstorm, and then my body, the doctor was saying, your body was shutting down because people have altitude sickness. But because I'd gone through the snow, it's like trying to do a CrossFit competition or whatever.
Mm.
At that altitude, you need a lot of blood and oxygen, and so I wasn't acclimatized to that. So the body was literally shutting down. And had I gone to sleep, because I was sweating so much, so there's also cold on the body and doing all these weird temperature things, they
Mm.
wouldn't have been able to get a helicopter in. So I probably would have passed out. So he said it's lucky that you stayed by the fire and you were able to reheat your body. And so they were going to tell me, when I was trying to reheat my body at night, they said, this is all the fire we can do. And I said, no, you have to make me another one. Like I can't get warm. You need to make me another fire. And thankfully they did. And hopefully, well, that was the thing that I think heated up my body enough to make it through, because all night I slept with this huge down jacket on and just couldn't really recover.
Wow. That I guess more than what you bargained for when you thought, oh, Everest is right there and I'll go and trek it. Oh, that is a very so when you came back and you reflect back on it, do you regret going or was it sort of like just chalk it down as a experience that you just managed to get through? Or yeah, I guess what I'm asking is that, was it still worth it?
Oh yeah,
Mm,
100%. I wasn't afraid. It's the weird thing. I wasn't afraid of the experience. I'm not upset I had that experience. If anything, I was grateful. It was
mm,
a life experience, and it taught me a few things. Number one, I
mm,
know there's something beyond this realm, and I know that for a few different reasons, but that was one of them.
mm.
Two, it makes me realize that I'm going to be taken away when I'm supposed to. That
Yeah.
there's a creator, and when my time is up, that time is up, and so the best I can do is live my life. Uh, as honestly and as authentically as possible without fear. I don't have any fear of death, so I'm okay to operate in this world. And then I know that my number will be called whenever it's supposed to, especially from all the other, near death experiences I've had with a gun to my head and talking to talking down a guy with a machete and,
Mm.
other experiences. So, the universe has my back. And so I can move forward in a more empowering and peaceful way, just knowing like whenever your time is done, it's done, but it's how you live each and every day. You don't know when your time is up.
Yeah, no, that's really profound, and thank you for sharing that, because yeah, I do believe that, if you're, yeah, it's your time, it's your time, and if it's not, you should just live your life. And if you live in fear, then you're not living anyway, so you might as well be dead in a way. So yeah, so that's a really profound and important foundation for living. So let's move on to, actually, before we move on, so that monastery that you saw, nestled so high up that nobody knew or even how to get there. What's your feeling about that? Do you think it was something, a remnant that's left from a past, or is it a secret place where they practice, these amazing monks that is just, and they've intentionally built it in a place where you have to bilocate to get there, otherwise you can't.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I'm sure that there's a way on foot. However, it was amazing that I even spotted it in the distance. And that's what I asked them. They said, we don't know how the trail gets there. And so it could be any of those things. I feel like there's a lot of stuff on the planet. We have no idea what's
Mhm.
going on. Even cultures. There was a few years ago where we found, this culture where they thought to exist, and then they actually spotted them. And so I feel like there's a lot of things that are hidden or unknown or uncommon, and maybe they don't want to be known, right?
Mm.
Especially with how crazy this world is. There's a lot of people who just want to be left alone, who want some silence, who don't want people to show up and take selfies wherever they are. So it could just be a simple thing where there's groups of people that say this is one of our training places for these specific types of people, and it could be through the monasteries in Nepal or in Tibet to then graduate to that type of school, maybe some sort of university that they go to, or training center that you get invited to, is very exclusive private school or of
Mm.
some nature. Or it could be, like I said from the description of some of the places in the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East, it sounded exactly like that, high up in the Himalayas, overlooking the mountains, and just absolutely gorgeous. And it was just so it was crazy because it wasn't like on a shelf. It wasn't like a flat part and then it was built on that. It was like stuck to the side of the mountain. It was just wild architecture. How did they get the friggin' building materials?
Yeah,
you
and
know,
maybe,
it just
yeah, exactly. Maybe it was carved into the even the mountain, perhaps. Like that place in Alexandria. I'm forgetting Petra. That place, where it's like a place that's carved into a canyon. So I wonder if it's even something like that.
yeah, I have no idea how they built it. It did look like there was a similar construction from some of the other monasteries, just like rather than being on a flat, it was all built on the mountain face.
Amazing. I
Wild.
love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I like to believe that there's some secret teachings being held there, and you have to be, worthy of it, to even be there and even know about it. But yeah, that fascinates. Very intriguing. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, Matt, was you've gone to Egypt, and you had from my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you went with a group of very scientific people, including Nassim Haramein, who's a physicist who's done a lot of research, I think over 30 years of research, trying to connect the dots between physics and quantum mechanics and archaeology, etc. So he was part of that group, and you had you went to the King's Chamber, Queen's Chamber, and you had some activations done using some special crystals. So I'm really curious about if that was a tour, or was it more like an expedition where you were traveling with these scientists where they were trying to do some experiments to understand or prove whether the Pyramid of Giza is actually an activation device, energy activation device?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say for me, it was definitely more of an expedition. Some people it was more of a tour. The group that we went with, there was Nassim Haramein, who's a physicist, and the entire group was filled of geologists, engineers, physicists, scientists, mathematicians. So it was a very, very highly evolved, highly intelligent group, and everyone was there to discover the truth, to see these things in real life, to get these guides and compare stories, compare notes, to see what we could find in real life. And I only knew from a few documentaries what they know about Egypt and the stars aligning and some of the construction and some of the theories. And being there in person is a whole nother thing. It is truly
Mm.
extraordinary. People would do different presentations in the morning, and sometimes it was a guide, sometimes it was from some of the people in the group. And one of the themes that kept coming up was that these things were used as some sort of ceremony. So the Book of Thoth and the Kybalion, well, the Kybalion written by Thoth, and no, the Emerald Tablets. That's what it is. It
Mm.
talks about Egypt as this kind of activation point, or this initiation where you have to get to this point. And so when we got to go in there, it was like it was great, but it was also kind of frightening at the same time. They're so vast and dark, and in the King's Pyramid, there's that lower tunnel.
Mm.
Right at the very bottom, there's this lower tunnel, and so I went in there first, and people wanted to go, and it's just this pitch black tunnel that apparently goes to the end. And I went in maybe 50 or 100 yards, and I can't see anything. It's the black is black, and there's people behind me. I was like, I can't go any further. This is there's like I can't keep going. I don't know how far this goes. This is incredibly terrifying because I'm in this black tube. You guys got to back up and get out. If somebody wants to go in first, further, please. So everybody had kind of gone in behind me because they were curious what's in there too, but you couldn't see anything. I don't know where it went. I don't know
Mm.
what was going on there. And then we get up to the King's Chamber. And this is the interesting thing. So you've got all the different theories and mathematics and all the engineering that you're looking at. None of it makes any sense. However, this is built is an
Mm.
engineering marvel, is not even close to how to describe it. It's absolutely ludicrous and unbelievable, these structures. And so we get into when I get to the top, the whole entire group is doing ohms. So they're ohming in the King's Chamber, and we have these crystals that Nassim Haramein made, these vibrational arc crystals that are supposed to create a little energy pulse. Now you can't take anything into the Great Pyramid. You're not allowed to take anything. So what I think that they did was the little one makes a little bit of a pulse, but if you put them together, then they increase the power. So I'd taken a 64 grid of these arc crystals, and they had them in the sarcophagus. Right, is that what you call it? The chamber, the little
Yeah,
thing.
I
I
think
think I should know the word. I can't even remember now.
I
But the
think
sarcophagus.
so. Sounds good to
Yeah.
me. Mm.
Yeah, so that would there's 64 of them behind your head, and then so people were taking turns, and you would go in there, you'd lie down, you get one on your third eye, and the 64 behind your head as the group is doing ohms, and Nassim Haramein seems to be like opening something up. So hopefully it was a positive thing, because now it's like holy smokes. But we did have a lot of people have mystical experiences after that, and so did I. And and then we ended up doing that in all three. So I guess when you do tours, you're only allowed to do one of the pyramids. We were able to do that same thing in all three pyramids. So that was really, really fascinating.
And with the Pyramid of Giza, out of the three pyramids, did you go to the King's Chamber and do that in there, and also the Queen's Chamber?
Yeah, so we did the ceremony just in the King's Chamber, but we were in looking at the Queen's Chamber, and then the other ones we were looking at them. So we didn't do the ceremony in all three, but we did
Mm.
go to all three spaces,
I have so
all
many
three
questions.
pyramids.
I have so many questions about this. Okay, so let me start with the 64. So why 64, and how was it placed behind your head?
So 64 would be up to Nassim. I guess it's sacred
Okay.
geometry and how it gets enough power, and it builds like this little skyscraper behind you, like a square cube. And if you look up arc crystals, .com or something like that, you'll find them and you'll kind of see these structures. And
Mm.
so I guess that had enough voltage, right? Where one wouldn't be enough, but 64 or 120. I think they did 64, but the more the better, essentially. And so I guess just like a little tiny battery, the more you put together, the more voltage you're going to have. And they did a lot of tests and experiments on the biology using the crystal, charging water, and similar experiments to show that these things actually have an effect on the environment. So it's hard to say for sure,
Mm.
but they got some scientific evidence to show that these things are actually doing something and emitting a frequency. And so that was the theory that they were suggesting.
So there were 64 crystals placed in a circle where you lay your head. Is that
It
right?
was it was behind like a rectangle grid, like an apartment building behind your head, all stacked up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm trying to visualize it. Okay, yep, cool, cool. So this particular crystal, I've never heard of it. So is it a, a special crystal that they made themselves somehow?
Yeah, this is what they have been working on forever. They talk about so if you go to arccrystals.com,
Okay.
they basically are talking about how they get this crystal, then they grow it, then they quantumly entangle it with some sort of crazy machine that does, again, you got to let Nassim talk about the science because
Mm.
I listened to it and I kind of grasp it, but not so
Mm.
much. But it
Yeah,
just
that's
sounds
okay.
like a whole. So they charge the crystal and then they tune it to some sort of frequency, and that has an oscillator, so it's able to hold that frequency within this pendant
Mm.
and do all these kind of wild things. So if you go to arccrystals.com, you'll see them and you'll probably see the photos where they put the grids together.
Okay, I'll find that link and I'll put it in the description below for people who want to check it out as well. So with your experience of it, so when you were lying there and you had this crystal on your pineal gland, your third eye, what were you experiencing?
In that moment, it wasn't like any like my I was popping out of my body, but when I was in the king's chamber, it was like this quick it was normal, but like you could it's hard to describe because crystals outside of it or any of that stuff, the structure is so friggin' grand. Your mind is blown. It's just
Mm.
such a grand, unbelievable, unfathomable place. So I
Mm.
was curious and awestruck and all of those things going through my body while this
Mm.
other stuff, while the whole group is going om with the
Mm.
things behind my head. And there was this kind of blip experience of, whether a download or whatever, it was just, a bunch of like vibrational stuff that
Mm.
I wouldn't put in the realm of mystical, but it was noticeable. And
Mm.
but the whole time it was like awestruck. I would say that's the best way to describe what I was feeling in that. Now, what happened or something beyond that, I don't know, but awestruck I feel is the best way to describe that whole entire experience.
Yeah, I mean that does sound like once in a lifetime opportunity type of experience, and so this was done on other people as well at the same, other people in the group.
Yeah, 100%. So we basically took turns and each
Mm.
person would go in and then so there was to get everybody through, we'd do three separate tours and your
Mm.
group would come in and there'd be, I think there's about 30 to 50 people in the room. And so you
Mm.
got the resonance of the Om going in that chamber with the technology.
Mm. And when you first entered the king's chamber, did you what was your first impression in terms of what was the energy like in there? Like I haven't been obviously, so I'm very curious when you enter these chambers and you've heard so much about them, and then you're there. Yeah, what was your first impression?
Well, to get to the king's chamber, you have to go through the corridor, and there's a name for it. People who love Egypt will get mad at me for not knowing, but there's this corridor on the way up that is unbelievable to
Mm.
even get there. So that's even more grand than the room because the
Mm.
room is weird where you have to duck down like Indiana Jones and then go underneath and then you get up and then you go into this little hole and then you're in it and then you got this box there. It's just like again, it's so confusing and
Mm.
curious and inspiring and uh confusing. How
Mm.
did they do this? What the heck was this for? You know, your
Mm.
brain is just on overload. So for me, I didn't get any, like feelings or anything special like that. I was just like, what the heck? This
Mm.
is unbelievable. it's, you just can't even believe it. It's like going to another universe. You just, when you're,
Mm.
and we went at night, right? We went on a full moon night. So it was
Oh, wow.
a
I didn't know
special
that.
day. We had like a whole thing going. So the whole thing, it was just such a surreal experience. You're doing it, but you almost can't believe it's happening. You almost can't believe you're there. You're just trying to be present and thinking, holy smokes.
Well,
You know?
that's the way to see the pyramids on a full moon night. I imagine it glows, a little bit when you look at it from the outside. That just sounds out of this world. So you come back from Egypt, and then you find yourself in a festival at Costa Rica, where you have this amazing, unexplainable, mystical enlightenment type experience with an Egyptian deity called Thoth. And for those who don't know, it's an Egyptian deity that's shown in pictures as with the human body and an ibis head. And I think it's supposed to be in charge of wisdom, writing, and moon as well. You were there at the Pyramid of Giza on full moon, so I thought that was an interesting connection. So yeah, please tell us about that experience. I know you've vlogged it, and I have watched it, but for our audience, I really want you to give us at least the key details of it.
Sure. Well, it's funny. Not everybody knows about that story. It's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. It makes no sense, and I'll just kind of it's always longer, but I'll just do the best I can. So I'm at the festival at Costa Rica. I meet this guy in the bus. He's a nice guy, and we kind of make friends. I don't see him until the Saturday, the Saturday, and I say, "Hey, man, how you doing?" He's playing this flute, and this flute is like some sort of Native American handcrafted this like 100 years. It looks like it's the most magical freaking flute I've ever seen. And he looks at me dead serious and he says, "The universe gifted me this flute. When I started playing it, I got taken to a cave with 9 beings." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Okay, go on." And he starts to describe the spirits where he's in this cave with these 9 beings, and they taught him some stuff about the universe and how things work. And he's looking dead serious. I'm asking him questions, and I'm watching his brain try to process what I'm asking and how for him to filter giving back something he is barely able to grasp. So it didn't look like he was just making this up, And I was like, holy crap, I think he's serious. I don't see any reason why I'd be lying to me. This flute looks absolutely incredible. Where did he get it from? And so I'm thinking, and after I asked him the questions, he talked, I can't even remember what he said, but talks about some of the universe and how it's working and how the beings are here and you can communicate with them in different ways. And I've studied with 3 different indigenous elders, and that's when I after I was done the festival, kind of fast forward the story, I called my friend David Lonebear and I said, "I figured out what the flutes are for." And he goes, "You did you?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, it's to communicate with the other beings, right? Isn't it? And he goes, "Yep." He's like,
Ah.
these frequencies, whether they're beings, where they come from or what the deal is, I don't know. I feel like that type of realm is similar to the perception of, a dog's hearing where you blow the whistle and it kills their ears because we can't perceive it. And same with the light spectrum, we only get a tiny bit. So
Mm.
there's probably a lot more to this realm than we associate it with. And I feel like we do this really easy thing where we call it aliens or spirits or whatever because we don't have another word to understand the other life form or the other existences that are here.
Mm.
So that's kind of my current understanding of that. I don't really know. I've gone down the rabbit holes of aliens and ETs and all that different stuff, and so that to me makes sense on a grounded level, and from what I've learned from the elders and some of my other teachers. So anyway, so at this moment, I decided to say I want an experience. I said a prayer. I want an experience where I want to know if a direct experience with God and ETs if they're real, and go to bed that night. The next day, I set that prayer and intention, and I do a walking meditation, kind of like Dr. Joe, where I just like hold that intent. I just hold it as hard as I can, and I'm able to do it for quite some time. Probably hold that intention for a solid minute, which is really hard to do if you try it. A minute is a long time to
Mm.
really just hold something with clarity. Usually, it's like 5 seconds maybe, and then my
Yeah.
brain goes off. 10 seconds maybe, and then the brain goes off. So I was able to hold that intent for about a minute or so while I was walking. And so I like to get my face painted and go around, get a little paint. I see this girl face painting, so I said, "Oh, hey, will you mind painting my face?" She goes, "Yeah, we can do an exchange." I said, "Sure." I have this vibrational tool. It's a little tuning fork that vibrates in it. And, I do healings for not healings, but experiences. I say, use a tuning fork with affirmations with a little guided hypnosis. And we go through some stuff and it's usually, pretty fun and people have great experiences with that. So she paints my face and then I was like, here, I'll do this thing. So I go through and I do the thing and basically I get them to imagine something that they really want, right? Hold it. And then I get them to hold that frequency. And then I use a tuning fork and I go top of the head, third eye, all these different spots. And I just say, focus on the feeling of what you want to bring in. And so, this is stuff that I learned from law of attraction, visualization, Dr. Joe, sports performance, everything, everything under the sun, and how do we manifest in this reality. So I try to gift them that experience in that few moments that I have them. And so when I do that, she just kind of closes her eyes and she's in meditation, right? Because that's what they're doing. And then she doesn't open her eyes. And so I'm just waiting there and I'm looking and, so I was like, oh, she's really meditating. So I'll wait. And I don't want to just leave, right? Because it's kind of rude. I just did that and I'm not going to leave. So she's still sitting there and I keep opening my eyes and she's not moving. And so I decide, you know what, I'll hold her hand. So that way I don't have to kind of be getting out of this meditation. Because what happens is I'm dropping into a deep meditation and I don't want to be down in this deep meditation waiting for her to say, wake up, like, hey, I got to get out of here. So my solution was I'll hold her hands and she can just give me a little nudge. And so I haven't told the story in a while. So let me see if I can get the order of then what happened. I guess it doesn't make
It's all right. I'll remind you because I remember
okay.
it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, let me know the order of things. So I immediately drop into the deepest, wildest, meditation. And you've probably had these experiences where it's like this complete oneness. It's extraordinary. I wish every meditation was like that, but it's not. They're usually just average practices of trying to clear my crazy brain. And I drop into this extraordinary meditation and I at one point I think that she is kind of getting up. So I open my eyes and did the flash happen first? I can't remember.
The flash happened while you were still holding her hand and you were just waiting for her to finish and then you saw the flash.
Yeah, so I think so I think like I thought like she had kind of opened her eyes, right? And then so I kind of started open and then I see this flash. Somebody had taken a picture and we were side to side and they were to our left. So my immediate thought is that's awesome. I'm gonna get a dope picture. My face is painted all cool. I've had a festival in front of that's my immediate thought. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get a great picture. Somebody's got an awesome shot. And then because I kind of saw the feet and the guy was wearing the weird thing is I saw jeans and feet, like these old shoes.
Did you? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is though, the trippy thing about that is that's if I were to peg that, it would look like something David Lonebear would wear. Like it would look like
it was him
because they were if he has a mystical thing and some of the stories, if you listen to our podcast together, he says the craziest stuff I've ever heard. Right? But
he's amazing.
He's a Native American elder. I can't tell him if it's right or wrong or whatever. They're just super wild stories. But that's kind of like I registered. That's kind of all I could see was the jeans and feet. Right. And so over my left shoulder, the picture gets dropped down and it's a Polaroid, like an Insta Polaroid. So I'm sitting there, I'm holding their hands and I'm looking at this picture that's dropping down. I'm expecting to come up what's happening, me and her together. And I'm thinking I got a sweet photo. So as this photo starts to develop, it becomes a friggin' picture of Thoth, the Egyptian god, and he's standing, and it looks like he's 9-10 feet tall, massive, as a real thing, not a like a physical being. And he had the bird head because he can also have a monkey head. And there's a woman on a chair that's a huge chair, like it's like a high chair for adults. You have a kid's chair, and it's a high chair for adults with a woman on it, and he's got his pen. And my brain goes, holy shit, that's in a vibrational device. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was holding a vibrational device to her third eye. So I see this, and it looks like he's in like some sort of basement of Egypt. He looks like he's in an Egyptian thing because the wall, you can tell the huge stones. It's a dark room, and I think there might even be, I don't know if there's there must have been some light because otherwise it would just be pitch black. But he's there, and he's jacked. He's huge. He's like, you could tell he's super muscular. And if you Google pictures of him, for whatever reason, they make him muscular, and that's how he was as a physical being in this picture. So I see this thing, and in my inside freaks out. I'm just like, what the flying F-bomb is this? What? And my brain is going, what the fuck? What the F? Like I'm on repeat, what the F? What the F? What the F? And I'm like kind of freaking out. And I don't know what to do. And I think, okay, So after like process, like I was like, what the heck? So I go, okay, because I want to deal with this photo, right? But the thing is, the meditation, if you ever had this, it is so good. It is the most intoxicating, beautiful oneness. Like, you're one with the creator. It's the most euphoric feeling you could ever have to be one with the creator. And that's what was happening. That never
Mm,
happens. So I'm like, I got to dip back into that because I have access to that right now.
mm,
And I'm going to dip back in. Then I can come out and handle this story, because it's on my lap. It's not going anywhere. So close my eyes, I dip back in, and like, who knows the time, say 10 or 15 minutes goes by. I have no idea. I feel a little nudge, open my eyes, and she's still not there. So I close my eyes again. I go back in, another 15, 20 minutes or something goes by. I think anyway, this is the timeline. So this time I open my eyes and her eyes are open. So oh no, wait, no. So I open my eyes and I'm just basically staring at her. Her eyes are still closed. She opens up to her eyes with me just basically tuned out into whatever this you like. It was like, yogi experience. Like I couldn't blink. I couldn't make a choice. I couldn't control my body. And she opens to me just staring like at her soul,
mm.
eye to eye after this really long experience. So she probably was like
Wow.
freaked out. And so she does this kind of smirk thing where she opens, she kind of goes, and then she's like, kind of gets a bit concerned, you know? And because I'm like, I can't break the stare. I can't make a choice. My butt, like, I can't choose anything. And so I see her look down and then she changes expression. She starts packing up all her stuff. And I don't exactly know what's going on yet. I just see her kind of moving around. Like I saw her glance down, moving around, doing
Mm,
different things. And I'm kind of processing what's going on. And I'm like, I don't think she'd leave. And then she gets up to leave.
mm,
And I'm like, this can't happen. She can't leave because I gotta solve this thing. And I'm trying to get out of this zone to control my body to say something. So she gets up to go in. I just say, please wait, please wait. And she books it. She's walking at a brisk pace. And I'm like, and then I think to myself, I got to go after her. Like I can't let her go. But then I think it's a festival and there's a guy chasing down a girl. Is this going to
mm,
be weird? But I'm like, I got to go. So I go to get up and my leg doesn't work. It's numb. I stand up and my
mm,
right leg is totally useless because we've been meditating for maybe 30 or 40 minutes. So it went numb. I couldn't walk. It was just a
mm,
useless leg. So I sit back down and think, my goodness, what the heck, what the heck is going on?
mm,
And I'm just kind of processing this. And I notice she is briskly now walking back to me
mm,
and comes right up to me really quickly and just looking down, won't look at me. She's looking down and all around me saying, where's the photo? Where's the photo? And I said, I don't have it. She goes, where's the photo? I said, I swear I don't have it. What did you see? She's like, empty your pockets. And I'm like, look, I promise. Like, look at me. Like, what did you see? She goes, where's the photo? She goes, empty your other pocket. And I was like, please look at me. What did you see? And she looks at me really briefly and then just pieces out. And
mm,
so I'm thinking, you know, I don't even know what I'm thinking.
mm,
So now I know she saw something too in that photo, but she took it. Now the photo's vanished. Was the photo real? What the hell happened with that? So she leaves and I don't know what I'm going to do now. And I look at this tree that's right there, right beside where we were. And it's got this like nook in it that's perfect for me to sit in, like a meditation seat. And I was like, oh shoot, I'm supposed to go sit in there. I go sit in there and I put my back and it's the most comfortable, perfect fit ever. And I basically get stuck and launched into the oneness field for like 8 hours from
wow.
midnight to like 8 in the morning. And I
Wow.
did not move. I could hear and sense people around me. So I could have that. But then I was also being taken or in the direct experience of everything. I had a bunch of insights, few of them, when you go into that realm, it's like another language or another experience or whatever the heck it is. But one of them I remembered was I go, oh, the wind takes the
Mm,
communication from all the animals and all the beings on one side, and then it shares it with people over here. And I was like, oh,
mm.
that's what the wind does. And I was like, that's neat. And I'm just stuck in it. And the whole crazy festival is going on. and I'm there, and I know people came up and like, took photos right beside me because they didn't know what was going on, and I could hear them talking, but it was no, I knew I was safe, and it didn't matter, and nothing broke the experience of what was happening.
Mm.
So I thought at one point that this was my life, that that's what I was going to do, that I had done it, and this was everything. I was never going to leave this tree. I was never going to leave Costa Rica. This thing was just everything, right? Everything was
Mm.
complete. I needed nothing. Eventually 6 o'clock or something rolls around, and all of a sudden my body starts to ache, right? Because
Mm.
I meditate for half an hour. My body, I'm flexible,
Yeah.
but not that flexible, and my body gets and everything just starts to ache, and I'm like, okay, I got to get up, and I get up and walk to the fire, and I'm trying to process what the heck had just happened. I told a friend a story, and I'm like, holy smokes. And then everything all of a sudden floods back, going to Egypt and some of the stories they talked about initiation and Thoth. And I guess proper pronunciation is Tahat. That's
Oh,
what
is
the
it?
Egyptians were telling me.
Oh,
That's what they were telling. Because I said some people say Thoth, some people say Toth, and one of the Egyptian guys says it's Tahat. I
it's a
said, okay.
hut.
And so, the fact that I was holding the vibrational thing, and that was weird, and just being in Egypt a few months before, that was odd. And so I really have no clue what that was. It was just kind of like a break in the seam of reality again, to just say this experience is more vast than you can even comprehend. What's going on here, and what life is, and what the universe is exponential learning and growth and experience beyond your wildest imagination. And it really feels like consciousness and where we are is so limited, and
Mm.
maybe we're just training for that next level where you almost have training wheels on a bike for a child to get ready to then get on a bike, and then maybe a dirt bike or something, and that's our evolution into this universe. And maybe this is like a human training ground to be able to comprehend and to adapt and to experience higher levels of consciousness, awareness, or life in a much grander scale. But I don't know, I don't know what the deal with that experience was, but the fact that she saw the photo too, and it freaked her out enough to run away, is
Yeah.
just confirmation that it was something. I don't know if she saw the same thing. I don't know if if she thought, Thoth, and she thought that it was me. I'm pretty sure I'm not Thoth. Like, I don't think that that's what I am. I think
Mm.
that it's something else, but it would have freaked her out. I don't know what she would have thought, because I was, I'm equally confused. So I always wonder one day if this person will reach out to me and tell me what she saw, so, you know,
Yeah, what
I
an
don't know.
amazing experience, Matt. Because I wish for you that you do find this person, and when you do, please let me know what she saw. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but the photo was in your lap. So when she walked away, when she freaked out and she started to pack up and walk away, um, did she take the photo with her, or did she think she thought she had the photo on her because she came back for it?
I'm pretty sure she took it because she packed up all her stuff and walked away, and then she came back asking for it. So I think she wanted to get away from me to analyze the photo. That's what
Mm.
makes sense. That's my hypothesis for the situation, but she didn't walk that far. So if she had dropped it, she would have
Mm.
found it. Or potentially, when she walked away the second time, found where she had, maybe she was just so frazzled she couldn't remember where she put it. So maybe she
Mm.
had found the photo after, and
Mm.
it still exists.
Yes, actually, I
I
hadn't
never
thought.
even considered that until right now.
Yeah, me too. Actually, when I was listening to your story, I was thinking, well,
Yeah.
permutations and combinations, what could have happened? And yeah, you're right. Maybe she just put it somewhere. And like, when we're looking in our handbag and we can't find something, we panic, and it's usually right there.
Mhm.
But oh, that would be so awesome if that photo still exists. So do you remember her taking the photo from your lap and walking away with it, or it kind of happened without you realizing it until she came back to
I
ask
didn't
for it?
I didn't know she took it until she came back because I was stuck.
Mm.
And maybe I would have processed when I got up, but when she was moving around and doing the thing, I was just trying to get back to my body so I could communicate with her. So I didn't particularly notice her grab the photo, because if I did, I would have probably been like, "Yo, I need to see that too. You can't be running away with that." You know,
Mm.
I have
Yeah.
questions too. You can't be running away right now. So I didn't process that. I was just processing her leaving and saying, "Hey, hey, like, wait a sec,
Mm.
so yeah, it wasn't something that crossed my mind. It was just her leaving.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit unfair of her to just take the photo because, like, obviously it was a mutual experience, and but yeah, the photo, and I guess another possibility is that she did take it, but it as easily as it materialized, it dematerialized once it had served the purpose of giving you both an experience that you had. And is it so? Do you think she was the girl in the photo? You know how you said there was a girl sitting on a high chair where Thoth was like doing something to her pineal gland.
I think so. That would make sense. It made sense to me that it was just us two somehow,
Mm,
But again, like I don't see myself as Thoth. I don't have like any kind of past lives where I think
mm,
that I'm him in any way. So I'm
mm,
not sure what that role was. Maybe I just really have no idea. But I think she was the girl. Yeah, maybe it
okay.
was like an archetype or something. I really don't know. But I did talk to David Lonebear about it after, and he kind of gave this. He always speaks cryptically, and even to
Mm,
this day, I can't tell if he's everything's true or part of it's true because I've been trying to figure that out for a long time
mm,
because the Native American history is 20,000 year old oral history. I have a book called Mad Bear from my friend Bruce, and in that book, it talks about I think he's like a psychiatrist or a professor that
mm,
follows around a Native American, and it's kind of like my experience with David, where it's just like normal life stuff, every
mm,
day, whatever, and then going to visit him and having just mundane experiences, and then all of a sudden something wild, in that
mm,
in that book, he talks about him showing him a skeleton of like a mini person. I can't remember what they call them, the little people, right?
mm,
And he shows this person that's with me, like, this is, one of the little people allowed me to have this, and he shows it, and he's like, yeah, they're everywhere. You can't see them, you can't perceive them. And David
mm,
Lonebear has that story too of hunting one time, and he's in nature, and he's covered, and he'd been there all day, and then all of a sudden he saw one. He's like, I haven't. It's like maybe spotting a moose or something. You don't see them
mm,
all the time, but they're there. So he kind of alluded to he had potentially something to do with it, or I knew about it. And if he is kind of as mystical as he can suggest at times, maybe so. I don't know, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, at the end of the day, it's an amazing experience, and I think that meditation you had after that, that is once in a lifetime. For most people, they'll never experience that level of meditation. And I've got a quick question about that before I think we can finish this episode. When you were in that a long meditation where you were experiencing oneness, one of the thoughts that occurred to me is that I wonder if you're in that gamma brainwave, where they say that happens when you're doing something high performance, or, a lot of monks who have been meditating for 20 years, when they measure their brainwave activity is usually gamma. And I imagine it's that oneness state. So what were you experiencing apart from what you've already said in terms of, like you said, you were aware of what's around you, but then you were also one with the universe. So were you like astral projecting? Were you with the stars? What was happening? Because that's a long time, 8 hours.
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's hard to describe because Alan Watts does the best metaphors for things like this in his books. He'll say it's like a knife trying to cut itself, and he has all these great analogies for trying to describe the indescribable. And
Mm,
so I'm not as eloquent as he is. He really does it well, but it's you're not in your consciousness to perceive it from a third view, right? So I can observe the cup as as an observer, but you become like the experiencer or something else. It's
mm,
it's it's yeah, it's beyond words. You're directly in it, but then there would be glimpses where then I could kind of process, right? So if you look at a painting, you're processing the painting, you're
mm,
processing life from viewing it from this separate thing. But in this experience, you're it. And so it wasn't like I was a star or floating around and being like, whoa, this is really cool. It was like my consciousness was doing its own thing, kind of being guided by the universe, where like you can't consciously control it, or at least I couldn't. I
mm,
don't, you're not consciously trying to perceive anything. You're just directly in a variety of experiences. And so when I knew that people were near, I still had that was kind of the observer while I was simultaneously indirect consciousness or indirect experience or whatever that is, because trying to put words to it just seems ridiculous, is impossible, because it's kind of like unknowable. It's you're in the direct experience of whatever that is, whether it's the universe, God, creator, gamma waves, life, right? But beyond mind, like, what is mind? Mind's an interesting thing to, it's like when you do the meditation, you go, okay, go into meditation and then say, all right, who is thinking? Oh, who is thinking? Then who is thinking the thinking? You keep going back and back, and like, where does this awareness start? And what is that awareness? So it's the kind of the experience where when I was in Everest, it was like me outside myself talking to me from another place. So it was like, is this a spiritual me? Is this a higher me? Is this what the hell was that? Are they both me?
And maybe there was your astral, or like part of you got pulled out and part of you still there. So you're multi-dimensional, in that way. Yeah.
Exactly. Who knows? And I think that this realm or this perception, we're limited here, right? Where our consciousness is so limited. And so, but we are infinite. So we get these glimpses, I think, through practice and through experience and through yearning. The one thing that I could say to, for someone having these experiences is that these are things that I've been seeking and training for and asking for and praying for and literally dedicating my life to only have like a few of these experiences. And the whole thing is, it's not about seeking these experiences. What I've learned over time, it's about the quality of life that you lead and who you are as a person, and following your heart and your gut. And that's something that I've done better than most anybody that I know, is just listening to the inner voice and honoring, who am I? What do I want to learn? What do I want to create? How can I help? And continually rolling those around in my life, and then having the successes and the failures and the experiences along the way. And then all of a sudden, sometimes I call it like a universal wink or a universal experience or a God experience, where you go boom, and it's like, holy smokes, there is this other realm, but you really need to focus on being human. Right. That's for later. That's beautiful. And yes, you're right. It does exist. Just so you know, it does exist. And here's infinite love from the universe for a brief moment. But now you got to walk the path as a human, because this is your choice. So how beautifully and gently and consciously can you walk this path of your life, and try to do it with grace. And so that's kind of what I've come back to. So I don't like, although I wish I could have that all day, every day, it would be amazing. I don't even see it as reasonable. It's kind of, as I get older, it's just getting simpler and simpler. Be kind, do your best to, follow your passions and be of service to humanity, have a constant connection with the creator through your will, through your prayer, through your spirit, through your work and doings, and ask for guidance, and then just follow that guidance and take the action. And every now and then, maybe God will bless you with an experience like that. Just says, here you go. Like, it's like a carnival almost, but just it's like your mother's love times a billion. You're in the oneness. You're in the womb of creation or something. I don't know, but it's fabulous, and I would love to live there. But you couldn't be there and be a functioning man or a woman at the same time. You just couldn't function. Right. So we're meant to be here, but we are also that. We are also everything. Right. It's that Rumi quote. You're not a drop in the ocean. You're the entire ocean itself. Right. So something like that. So that's the idea. You get to experience, oh, holy smokes, I'm the entire ocean. This is incredible. It's like, whoop. But this is this little bit you get to play with for now. You'll come back to that. Don't worry. It's still there. Just in case you ever get worried. Don't worry. It's still there. Right. I'm going to remind you. But now go enjoy being in this drop for a brief blip of time.
That was so beautifully put. That's like the best 5 minutes of wisdom I've ever heard. You summarized that so beautifully. And I completely agree that, it's so nice to have these experiences, but ultimately the challenge is to know all of that, but still exist in this world and be able to, live with that, those principles and in everyday life. That's the challenge. That's the mastery. And, you got to embrace that because that's why we're here, it seems like. But yeah, you put that so beautifully. There's nothing I can add to it that can, even come close to it. So And this is a great time, I think, too, for if you could tell the viewers for how they can reach you, and if you can give a little description of you run a really unique coaching program as a life coach, and also for athletes, you've got a specialized program for athletes called the Zen Athlete Program. So if you can give the people who are listening to you are inspired by your words and your wisdom, if they want to reach out to you, how they can do that.
Well, first of all, I very much appreciate being on the show. You're a phenomenal interviewer, so I've enjoyed this, and I love getting deep in those topics because most people don't go into that stuff, and I really enjoy reflecting on some of those stories because they're some of the most special experiences of my life, and sometimes I forget they happened. I remember, you know, it was like maybe 8 months ago or a year ago. I was like, oh yeah, like that. Somebody reminded me. Is like I'll get an email now and then because that video goes around. It's like, yo, I had an experience with Thoth too. I'm like, holy crap, like that happened. Nice to be reminded, of the mystical, especially when you're in a challenging reality with, you in Australia having a challenging time and Canada have a challenging time as well. So I appreciate this dialogue and the reminder of the infinite that exists because you forget, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing is just you forget and you got to be reminded. And the path is simple and it's not flashy. It's just challenging. Just like if
Mm.
you're really, really overweight and your health is terrible, well, the solution is not flashy. You got to start going to
Mm.
the gym and make better dieting plans and all that kind of stuff. But you got to
Exactly.
persevere over time and then you'll get the result. And I feel like it's pretty similar with the spiritual path. And so for me, yeah, like I started with Zen Athlete and, that's the guide for peak performance. But I've always said that book could be for anybody, musicians, business people, entrepreneurs, because it is the science of manifestation. It takes Dr. Joe, which would be one element of the visualization and the belief set, but all the other things like goal setting, visualization, simulation, and all these other elements that make you a great athlete, but you can do it for absolutely anything. So, over the years of transitioning from working with athletes, now I mostly work with people who want to consciously design their life. And you have to know who you are. What do you value? What do you want to create? What are you interested in? And people like, I don't know what my life purpose is. That's super easy. We can figure that out in maybe an hour or maybe a week through going through basic questions that you do. Now, once you know what's most important to you. It kind of like say it's like a direction. Most people don't know if they're going north, east, south, or west. So what they're doing is they're like in a sea of fish and they're just going along, trying to find the easiest thing. They're just living life by default. Oh, here's money. This is kind of easy. I'm going to do this. This is all okay. But they're not consciously architecting their life from their heart and their soul and spirit. And so we need to get really, really clear on that first, and then you add all of the peak performance, mindset, goal setting, esoteric, spiritual together so you can do it in the most empowering way, but from a place of fulfillment, right? So it's like, oh, well, when I get this business, then I'm happy. Or when it was sports, I would achieve this goal and then I'd be happy. No, can you be whole, happy, harmonious, and full of self-love and worth now in this process of consciously creating your life? And so, for people who want to do something like that, I do one-on-one coaching and I also have a group called Atomic Alchemy. So, I always just try to help people as much as I can. There's programs that you can do that are very simple. Nothing is very long. And, for my whole life, just trying to I always want to know the trick, right? That's why I said, Master, go, what's the trick? How do I do this? What's the trick for law of attraction? What's the trick to enlightenment? What's the fast path? I've been looking for that and I'll keep looking because I'm a sucker for it. I can't help it. But there is no fast path. There's processes that work better than others. There's stuff that's more efficient. So if you want to be really strong and someone recommends you jog, well, if you do squats and deadlifts, that's a better thing to do. You know what I mean? It's like there are different tools. If you want to go really fast on a boat, you probably want a motor boat, with a massive engine and not a sailboat. They're two different things. They have two different functions. And
Mm.
so over time, I've learned these tools that have more efficacy, whether it's like quote unquote shadow work or, the esoteric of go right to the bottom of the rabbit holes to say, look, these are the experiences. Here's are some tools you can try. And this is really going to accelerate your process. So it's really for people who want to consciously architect their life in a powerful way and be of service to humanity, right? If you're out there just, trying to get things and, it's about people who want to know who they are, do
Mm.
something good for humanity and live a fulfilling life. And so that's basically most of my coaching will revolve around those ideas.
Yep. And you have a really successful podcast as well called Mastermind, Body and Spirit Podcast. So I encourage everybody to go and check it out because you have amazing guests on your show. Like it's such an amazing library of people who are inspiring and have done, incredible things. So I'll provide all the links below in the description bar anyway. But let me just thank you, Matt, for being on as a guest. I'm still a beginner. So it means a lot. When I watch your podcast and I listen to you, I always I sense this energy, you resonate or you radiate a very pure energy, and that's very genuine. And I always get that when I listen to you on your podcast, and today's podcast was no exception. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much. You did a phenomenal job. I think you host better than me. You ask really great questions and do it. But I'm like constantly ranting. So you have that same thing, the genuineness too. And I can only be myself. And I started the podcast just before everything went nuts. And all I wanted to do was interview people that had the stories, the lessons, the wisdom, the character, the life experience to help people on their journey, to pick their brain, to know what it's like to live a fulfilling life, to be successful, to have a spiritual connection, to be a good person, to evolve in a meaningful way towards happiness and fulfillment and growth and things like that. So, there's 550 episodes so far, 530 or something like that. And so I appreciate anyone that's doing the same work because it's about inspiring conversations. And, we can only be the best example for ourselves, for other people, right? So when we're doing the podcast or we're improving ourselves, we're just showing that example. We're not saying we know everything. We're saying this is something that we hope that can help people. So I honor your time because a podcast takes a lot of time, and I appreciate the vote of confidence for having me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I went with my intuition and it definitely paid off. And I'm so grateful. I'll always remember, and I'll pay it forward to anyone else doing the same. So, and your compliment made my day. Thank you. Because I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I just try the best I can. But what makes it easy is that I'm talking to a person who I'm very inspired by. So the questions come easily. So that's my trick.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I have always wondered about our potential to master superhuman abilities. I truly believe we are superhuman, and somewhere in the midst of time, we went from being unlimited beings with superhuman powers to very limited beings in our abilities and consciousness. And listening to Matt talk about his mystical experiences that defy the laws of physical reality is so inspiring to me, and a reminder for us all that we in fact live in a magical world and we are exponentially more than what we have been led to believe. So I hope to bring you more guests that are living proof of our superhuman potential and self-mastery. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this episode, please do check out Matt's website, mattbelair.com, where you can find links to purchase his book, Zen Athlete, A Guide to Self-Mastery. Join his coaching programs, both life coaching and specialized coaching program for athletes called the Zen Athlete Program. And check out his top-rated podcast, Mastermind, Body and Spirit Podcast, where he has the most conscious leaders and enlightened thinkers on the planet sharing their stories, lessons, and wisdom. I'll provide all the links below in the description bar. So until next time, thanks for watching.